Hey, wherever you are, take a breath and keep it. Imagine you could rearrange the small pieces of your life, the tiny daily moves, and they would add up to something you barely recognize a year from now. Not a dramatic adrenaline rush, not a one-week boot camp. Just tiny adjustments like the sound of a single drop in a pond that eventually shapes the shoreline. That's the promise tucked into Atomic Habits by James Clear. And today we're going to unwrap it, gently, bit by bit. Read this next, and in the next 12 minutes I'll walk you through what this book is, why so many people swear it changed the way they live, work, and learn, and what to actually do with the ideas, without turning them into another dusty self-help to-do list. Why care? Because habits are the invisible architecture of our lives. They decide whether we're exhausted or energized at the end of the day, whether projects gather dust, whether a dream grows teeth and walks. Atomic Habits is less about willpower and more about design, how to make the right moves easier and the wrong moves harder. If you want change that lasts, not loud and temporary but quiet and cumulative, this book is a blueprint. What the book is about. Picture this: instead of staring at a mountain called lose 20 pounds or write a novel, you focus on the little, repeatable actions that make those mountains possible. James Clear builds the book around one central idea: small habits compound. He breaks habit formation into a simple, memorable system: cue, craving, response, reward, and flips it into something actionable. Make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, make it satisfying. The book is practical and conversational. It's full of short stories and experiments. Athletes tuning technique, entrepreneurs designing environments, people reshaping their identities through micro-choices. The structure is helpful. Each chapter gives you one idea and tools to apply it immediately. Think of it as a field guide to behavior change with checklists, examples, and ways to measure progress without draining your soul. At its heart, Atomic Habits reframes the problem of change. Instead of asking, how do I achieve X? You ask, what kind of person could achieve X? And then, crucially, you act like that person in very small ways. That identity-first framing is the book's emotional engine. It transforms habit change from performance to identity building. When you change your small actions, you begin to identify differently. And identity pulls on behavior more reliably than willpower ever could. There are a few big themes that power the whole thing. The power of aggregation. Tiny gains multiply. A 1% improvement each day compounds into radical change. This isn't math as fantasy. It's a mindset shift. We tend to overestimate short-term change and underestimate long-term change. Clear weaponizes patience, and that's liberating. Environment over motivation. If you rearrange your life's default settings, you remove fights over fleeting motivation. Want to read more? Place a book on your pillow. Want to move more? Put your running shoes by the door. The book argues that our surroundings are silent partners in every habit we form. Systems trump goals. Goals give direction. Systems produce results. Clear argues that winners and losers have the same goals. What differs is the system. This pushes you to design processes you'll enjoy and can repeat. Identity as the lodestar. The most sustainable way to change is to become the type of person who does the thing. I'm the kind of person who exercises, not I want to run a race. It's subtle, but identity-based habits lock in behavior through self-image. Why is this relevant today? We live in a hyper-accelerated culture that prizes breakthrough stories, the overnight success, the radical pivot. But most meaningful change happens quietly, in margins, the steps you repeat when nobody's watching. In an age of constant distraction and high expectations, Atomic Habits offers a humane architecture for steady, realistic progress. But let's be honest, the framework isn't a magic wand. It demands iteration and compassion. Clear highlights that setbacks are part of the process, not proof you're broken. He gives us language to understand relapse as data, not failure. That tone, firm but forgiving, is practically therapeutic for anyone who's exhausted by perfectionism. What makes Atomic Habits sing isn't just the ideas. It's how Clear delivers them. Clarity of concept. The book's 4 laws, make it obvious, attractive, easy, satisfying, are a storytelling device. They're short, repeatable, and they work as both diagnostic and prescriptive tools. That's an elegant piece of design. A reader can carry the whole system in their head. Concrete storytelling. Clear peppers his book with crisp case studies, athletes, business leaders, writers. These stories are compact, visual, and applicable. They aren't fluff. They're evidence that a specific rule works in specific contexts. Actionable rituals. Each chapter ends with how-to steps. It reads like coaching rather than lecturing. The voice is warm and practical, like someone who's tried things, failed, and learned to simplify. Accessible tone. The prose is clear, conversational, and emotionally resonant without being saccharine. That accessibility helps the reader believe, I could try that. Focus on design. Many habit books fixate on motivation. Clear focuses on design, on the scaffolding of our lives, which feels modern and realistic. In design terms, he's giving blueprints, not pep talks. I'll be honest, quoting from memory is risky, but there are a couple of short lines from Atomic Habits that people often repeat because they capture the book spirit. You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. That one lands hard because it flips our idea of achievement. It points you at everyday structure rather than dramatic effort. Another paraphrase that circulates is the idea that if you want to master a habit, you should commit to a system of tiny wins that make the habit feel inevitable. That's not a direct quote, but it captures the book's operating principle. If you want verbatim passages, pick up a copy, and if you enjoy them, consider bookmarking a line that becomes your personal compass. Small phrases can be snacks of motivation. The trick is to turn those snacks into a meal plan. A quick look behind the curtain. James Clear wasn't a guru from the start. His writing grew from experience. He survived a severe baseball injury in his youth and spent years experimenting with habits, productivity hacks, and behavior design. That combination of lived experience and careful experimentation infuses the book with humility. Clear often uses stories from science and sport, but he writes like a teacher, not a preacher. Atomic Habits was published in 2018 and hit a cultural nerve. Its ideas spread fast because they're shareable, short rules, practical tactics, and stories people can imitate. The book's impact shows up in 2 ways: readers who adopt the tactics, and workplace cultures that borrow the language to reframe how teams work. It also helped popularize certain habit-tracking practices and rituals, the things you now see in productivity apps and communities. There's also a subtle marketing genius in the book structure. It's optimized for sharing. The 4 laws, the habit loop, you can put these on a sticky note and actually use them. That portability helped the book travel through social media, newsletters, and podcasts, the exact ecosystem we live in now. Okay, let's make it practical. If you left this podcast with nothing but one experiment to try, do this. Pick one micro-habit. Not write a novel, but write 300 words. Not get fit, but put on workout clothes. Use the 4 laws. Make it obvious. Put your notebook on your keyboard. Set a visible signal. Make it attractive. Pair it with something you enjoy, coffee, a playlist. Make it easy. Design the environment so the first step is tiny. Open a blank doc instead of outlining a book. Make it satisfying. Give yourself a small reward, check a box, mark a calendar streak. Repeat this for 30 days and watch the identity shift. People underestimate how fast tiny actions become part of who you think you are. That's the compounding effect, not glamorous but permanent. A cinematic image might help. Picture a pianist repeating the same scale every day. At first, it feels mechanical. Later, it becomes the musician's posture, their ease. Habits move from awkward mechanics to fluent identity. No book is perfect. A few thoughtful critiques to keep in mind. The framework is not one size fits all. People with certain mental health conditions or structural life constraints may need tailored support beyond habit design. Some readers may find the optimism glosses over systemic barriers. Habit formation is easier when you have the time, resources, and a safe environment. Finally, the book emphasizes individual agency, which is powerful, but it shouldn't be read as a moral judgment about those who struggle. Context matters. Taken together, these criticisms don't negate the book's utility. They simply remind us to apply the ideas compassionately and adaptively. Here's the last thing I want you to hear. Transformation rarely looks like fireworks. It looks like a series of small, faithful gestures. The early wake-up who waters a plant, the person who writes one paragraph before breakfast, the runner who picks their shoes up off the floor and leaves them there. Those micro-choices, repeated without spectacle, do the heavy lifting. If you want one line to remember from today, you don't need to overhaul your life overnight. You only need to design it one tiny habit at a time until the person you want to be is the person you are by default. If this episode sparked something, curiosity, hope, or even a healthy skepticism, and you want to dive deeper, pick up Atomic Habits by James Clear. There's a lot you can try right away, and the book lays everything out in a clear, compassionate way. If you'd like to buy the book, there's an Amazon link in the description below. Grab it there. If you do, send a single line in the comments about which tiny habit you'll try first. I'll read them. Thank you for letting me into your headphones for the next 12 minutes. If you like the show, subscribe, share with a friend who's trying to change something, and most important, be kind to yourself as you try. Huge changes don't always come from massive acts. They come from consistent, imperfect practice. Read this next. Until next time, one small thing repeated,